I'm Caitlin, and I'm a freshman here. This was my first missions trip. Okay, so, I think a highlight of the trip would be the new relationships that I got to make. And I think everybody, God's presence there, let everyone be really vulnerable and real with each other. Within that, I was actually really scared to go on this trip, and when we got there, we were split into different sites, and I was not in a group with people I knew that well, and I kind of was freaking out in my mind that morning and kind of wanted to cry, but I realized that it was okay, because after that first day, being in a group with people I didn't know let me make some awesome new friends, have some great laughs, and help me to grow my courage. Because before we left, that was my prayer going into the trip, was to have the courage to be a willing servant for the Lord. And I think I really grew because while we were there, they had volunteers pray for meals, and we had share time after dinner, and I was able to do both of those things. Yes. Because I'm coming to realize that it doesn't matter what others think of me, as long as I'm doing what I know to be the next right thing, because it's all for His glory and not for the approval of man. Another thing I thought was just awesome was yes, we're there helping serve and rebuild homes, but it's not just the homeowners that are being touched. The Samaritan's Purse staff was just super intentional and loving and a great example of a servant's heart. Yes. And then I think a last thing, I don't know, I was reading my Bible the one morning and just Psalm 62 verse 5 stood out to me. And it's, "Rest in God alone, my soul, for my hope comes from Him." And I thought that was a really awesome thing, because later that day, they have chaplains come to the site, and we got to talk to them. But the man's name was Robert, and one thing he said was we can't be fickle in our faith in the Lord. He gave the example, some people pray, "Oh Lord, help me save this person, but don't do this, don't harm them in any way." But I think, not saying the hurricane was good, but in the darkest times, that's where God shows up the most. And I think that really hit me because on one of our sites, we actually got to meet the homeowner, and it's crazy how it was a humbling experience, because they've been living in this trailer they found right after the hurricane for the past 2 years, and I guess it's has mold and it's just not the best place to live, but that's where they have to be. They've been for the last 2 years, and to be able to help build this home for them. And he was telling us that before the hurricane hit, he wasn't that good of a person and was into bad stuff, but afterwards, he came to the Lord, and I think that's awesome. And I think when we request big things from the Lord, He answers, but it's when we are fully in also, yes. And that's that, and I wanted to say thanks to everybody who made it an awesome trip. Yes.
My name is Carissa. I am also a freshman, and this is also my first missions trip. And I wanted to start off with kind of a personal story that kind of really made me think about this, after going to the missions trip. When I was, my sister growing up would have seizures occasionally. And when I was 8 years old, there was one night where I was just begging my parents to sleep beside her in her room, because I wanted to have a sleepover with my sister, and I just kept begging and begging, and they finally let me. And I woke up that morning and she wasn't waking up. I tried so hard to wake her up, and I just thought, well, maybe she's in a deep sleep. So I went to go tell my mom, and she was actually having a seizure. And we rushed her to the hospital and all, and I will never forget this because I will never forget the time the doctor told me if I wasn't in the room at that time and had woken up at that very moment to tell my mom, she wouldn't have made it. And it's really special for me because if you're really feeling something in your heart, like a calling, if you're really feeling it and you just keep begging and you want to do it, that's a sign. God is telling you to do so. And I really feel like, even though I didn't know it at the time because I was only 8, God was telling me to sleep in my sister's room that night. And so going into the missions trip, I was very excited but also very nervous because I've always had a fear of like public speaking and speaking in large groups and just like being there on the second day, I did have a breakdown because I really wanted to pray in a group setting because I can pray on my own, but it's just so hard for me to pray in a group setting. So I talked to a few of the girls. We had our own crying session in the bathroom. And then the next day, Rebecca, who's also here at his house, had given her speech about like her story, and she was supposed to God was telling her to go spend time with her family. And in that moment, when we're talking about God moments, I felt that God was telling me, Carissa, you need to pray. And I truly felt his presence, and it was so heartwarming to feel. And I prayed that morning at the work site before we started working, and then the next day or that night I even prayed in the large group setting before dinner. And it just felt so good to feel God's presence through all of my friends around me. And I truly believe that God sets all these people in your life to share God's love and to shed God's love with you. And he puts people at certain places of your life in the time of need so you can feel that presence and you can talk about it together, and all the support and the constant comfort. And I just felt really at peace with that. And there were just so many moments that I felt calm to do so in praying, and just so many new relationships that I formed, new friendships, new bonds, a stronger relationship with God. And I honestly felt leaving Texas that I was leaving a part of my heart there. It felt like a part of me. And it was sad to leave because it was my first mission trip. Oh, here I go. I just love helping people, and I always feel a calling to help people, and that's all I wanted to do. Going on this mission trip, I was so excited to do something that was bigger and better than myself, and it was such a good opportunity, and there was no better place than to do it with the people at his house, because ever since I came to his house, I've felt so welcomed in here, and it's something I haven't really felt before, and so many doors have been opened for me since I've been here. Everyone here is really special, and I'm just so excited to make more memories with you all.